Hi, team. This time of the year is one where we're oftentimes reflecting on what are all the initiatives, what are all those IT investments, what are all those things that we need to do to prepare ourselves for next year, right? Whether it's the end of your fiscal year, the beginning of your new fiscal year, or you're starting to think about how do you ultimately implement and drive a pretty significant transformation. Let me give you a couple of facts. I had an opportunity to talk to a Gartner analyst recently, and there was a few facts that were very interesting to me. Number one, in a recent survey they did with CIOs, 47% of CIOs viewed culture as a barrier to success. 47%. When you think about the jobs that are going to be available as we look forward up into 2022, we're going to have about a 30% job shortage. And in that 30% job shortage, what do you think was one of the primary reasons where a technical or non-technical talent might join your company? Culture. When you think of 2021, don't think of this as just being a large enterprise only conversation. By 2021, 80% of mid-sized businesses are going to accelerate the digital transformation by changing their culture. So, this is a time where as we think about investments and what we have to do, oftentimes as business leaders, we don't focus on how are we going to implement and drive a new culture. Here's a challenge that we fall into. We are very, very good at this time of the year at talking about the what. We have lots of frameworks to tell it what we're going to do. This is what we're going to do. We're going to talk to our employees. You have frameworks like VSEM, Vision, Strategy, Execution, Metrics, that very clearly identify the what. You have V2MOM, Salesforce's, again, very, very clearly identifies the what. Here's the thing though. When you focus only on the what you get is you get people that are compliant. They're in a compliance mode. They never transform over into that commitment mode. What do I mean by that? If you're trying to drive a transformation, if you have a compliance mode, they're going to do exactly what you tell them to do as outlined in that plan. It's all about the what. And they are waiting for it to fail as opposed to how do I get that buy-in where they're giving me their initiative? They truly own it. They move from compliance to commitment. How do you do that? You gotta talk about the why. The why is so important. The why is what generates that commitment. The why is what gets people's energy going. And they understand this is why we're doing it so they can carry that message on. Okay, so let's get a little bit more tactical. So how do you talk about the why, whether you're a large organization, small organization, how do you do it? Well, I mentioned some frameworks, V2MOM and vision, values, methods, obstacles, and metrics. You can look it up. Salesforce uses it. You can also look up VSEM. We've talked about that. That's vision, strategy, execution, metrics. You can look those up. But there's a framework that I think actually should be added to that. And instead of talking purely about the what, you need to begin with the why, which is a question. So I call it QBAM. And in the QBAM framework, what QBAM basically stands for is, it stands for questions, belief, answers, and metrics. So let's talk about that. Question. The question is what is that high value problem or opportunity that you feel you have to answer, that you have to, that you are trying to drive? Again, you're phrasing it as a question, right? We feel we have to drive recurring revenue as our key priority, or we feel, and we'll talk about if you're in a retail environment example, maybe it's about reducing the amount of wait time a customer waits in line so that you can reduce cart abandonment to drive better revenue. Whatever your challenge or your transformation is, phrase it in terms of a question. What is the question that you're trying to answer? Once you do that, then we want to talk about your beliefs. What has to be true in order for that question to be of high value? In other words, what are your core assumptions? Then your answers. Your answers are what are the actions that you are going to take in order to turn those beliefs into facts. And then finally, your metrics. Your metrics is how you're going to know that you're on the right track, right? How do you measure that? So Let's look at an example of what I'm talking about to get a little more tactical. So a question could be, how do you eliminate lines in your stores? That's a core question that you might think about in your retail. You could pick a question in your financial services, banking, but you get the idea. The beliefs. Well, we got a core belief that, cart abandonment ultimately drives a tremendous loss in value, and that's the primary lever that we want to pull. So in order for this to be the case, underneath that whole belief, there are a set of sub-beliefs. Technology exists that I can actually eliminate the lines. I gotta test that. I gotta believe that customers actually want and will enjoy a checkout-less experience. And then I also gotta believe that, if I eliminate the lines and I give them a checkout-less experience, that's gonna save them more time than if they were in the line and they had to do a checkout, right? So those are your core assumptions. Then you begin to, again, think about what are the answers or the actions you're going to take to turn those core assumptions into facts, and then how are you going to measure it. Here's the point. The point is that this framework is allowing you to understand and communicate the why behind it, the why you're doing these things. Here's the question we're answering. Here's our core beliefs. Can you get people on board with that, as opposed to jumping directly into the what, which simply drives compliance? Okay, so now once you have this, once you communicate the why, what do you do then, right? How do you ensure this thing keeps going? Any manager, any leader, any employee, you ultimately have three sources of power. You can put your time into something, you can invest your money into something, or the third one, which is what everyone underestimates and typically doesn't work on, and that is you can build momentum. That means you can get others behind you in order to drive that success. Okay, so I have a very simple model. I call it the execution 1, 2, 3 model. Hopefully you find this helpful. When you're driving any transformation, number one, make sure you communicate the why, the what and the why. What are you doing and why you're doing it on a single page. Why is that? Because when you leave the room and you're not around, you got to get people to be able to talk about your transformation, to talk about your initiative. And if it's buried in 40 pages of PowerPoint slides, I can tell you, they're not going to take the time to pull it out and understand it and go through the detail. So you got to be able to put it on a single page. Doesn't mean you don't have that 40-page detail, because you're going to need that to probably condense it down to one page, but you got to be able to communicate it on a single page. That's one. Step two, you know those beliefs we talked about in the QBAM model? You got 2 weeks to align your key stakeholders. That means who in the organization do you fundamentally believe has to share those beliefs in order for that core question to be true? Who is that, right? And you got 2 weeks to align them. Anything longer than 2 weeks, and you begin to lose, again, that feeling of momentum, right? 2 weeks is plenty of time. Finally, you got 3 weeks, the 3 and 1, 2, 3. You got 3 weeks to ultimately drive your first success. Now, here's the deal. We're talking about not the whole project, not the transformation done in 3 weeks, but we're talking about being able to highlight one element of success. Why is that important? Well, people like to be on winning teams. Again, it's that momentum. It may be, hey, you had a conversation with a stakeholder who really brought up some interesting facts and agreed as to where the direction you're going. It may be a conversation you had with a customer that you had a conversation, they gave you a favorable view of your transformation. Or maybe stage one happened. Whatever the case is, find some success, no matter how small it is, and begin to communicate that success within 3 weeks. There's your execution 1, 2, 3 model. All right, so hopefully this helps you as you're going into the next year and you're thinking about what are your plans, how do you drive success? Remember this, number one, you want to be successful, you got to move your employees from compliance to commitment. How do you do that? You do that by not only talking about the what, but by enforcing the why. QBAM framework is a great way to do that. Questions, beliefs, answers, metrics. Once you have that, don't forget to utilize your third source of power, momentum, the execution 1, 2, 3 model. Number 1, communicate on a single page. Number 2, 2 weeks to align stakeholders. And number 3, and probably one of the most important, 3 weeks to mention and communicate some type of success. All right, hope you enjoyed it. We'll talk to you guys next week. Bye-bye.